What's up? What's up? What's up, y'all? You are listening to the Data is My Science podcast, the show that makes data your passion. This is your host, Dapper Data, as usual. I just want to start off by saying you are in the right place today. All right. We have a special guest. His name is Dr. Benjamin Harvey. Okay. If you don't know him, you will get to know him by the end of this podcast. This guy is very, very special, and I've done a lot of research on him. He's done a lot of work in the data science community. Great individual. And maybe it's just me, my selfish mentality. I brought him on probably to give me some insight as well, maybe keep some motivation going for myself as I'm entering my final year of my doctorate degree. But what we'll be doing is really discussing his journey as a data scientist and the journey of a data scientist. And hopefully we can encourage everybody to really people that are on the fence of being a data scientist, people that maybe have heard the word data science, and they really want to know, hey, what does data science really mean? We want to encourage you all to keep going, keep getting involved into the community, right, and keep contributing to the community as well. And so hopefully we can continue to push you all through with this talk. But I am truly honored and blessed to host someone who has been very involved in the data science community, such as Dr. Benjamin Harvey, and who has made a great impact on the community as well. But without further ado, here's Dr. Benjamin Harvey. You see him there. If you're on the YouTube, if you're or if you're on any of the streaming sites. But just to highlight some of the things that Dr. Benjamin Harvey has done. He's made a tremendous impact in the data science community, as we talked about before. And right now, he's currently the director of Maxar Technology, where he leads the data science community pursuits for the company. And he has served as a data scientist and an architect in data science within the intelligence community as well. He has an extensive research background, right? He's been involved with MIT and other areas as well. And I just want to highlight, he went to Bowie State University, okay, BSU. So just want to put it out there. So he's done some work there, and he's had a lot of awards, a lot of honors as well. Within Bowie State University, he won the dissertation award there in 2015 and 2017, the Intelligence Community and Counterintelligence Security Professional Award, and in 2019, the NSF National I-Corps Principal Investigator AI Augmentation and Integration Award. So a little fun fact about Dr. Harvey is that this guy has played D1 football, right? And he has played D1 basketball at the same time, and he does not drink. So no excuses out there for any of you all, okay, who think that you can't multitask. And he's somebody that definitely has done a lot for the community, for our culture as well. Thank you for being on the show, Dr. Benjamin Harvey. If you could just tell them a little bit about yourself, tell them like where you're from, how you got into data science and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. First, before we get started, man, I just wanted to, tell you thanks, man, really for spearheading this effort, man, really being an advocate for the data science community and African American that is, showing that, there's a level of expertise, there's a level of knowledge, just wherewithal in the end about data science coming from representing from the historically black colleges and universities, representing from Bowie State University, my brother, somebody that is, I'm telling you, when I think about, the bright stars out there who are going to be the next generation of leaders in this space, I look to you and I say, hey, man, you're next up. When it comes to pushing the limits of the technology, as well as reaching back to pull the younger generation that needs to become aware of the opportunities that present themselves within these spaces. This is what this show is doing. It's opening the eyes of the individuals that need to know and understand and have awareness of what's going on, as well as it's showcasing the talent and the skills that are within the Black community writ large. So, man, kudos to you.
Thanks,
Hey,
man.
keep it up,
Thanks.
man. Hey, I know it. I know it's tough, man. But the grind is hard at first, but at the end of the day, it's gonna pay off.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so a little bit about myself. Um, so as stated before, I graduated from Bowie State University with a bachelor's of science in computer science. Um, but I also, after graduating with my bachelor's in computer science, I went over and started at the National Security Agency. I did 10 years at the NSA. Um, while I was achieving and getting my degree from Bowie State University for my doctorate, I was also pursuing and doing research in the research director at the National Security Agency, working across the capabilities organization, and really, kind of honing my skill set in as a computer scientist and engineer as well as a data scientist. So I did about 10 total years at the NSA. I graduated with my Doctorate of Science in Computer Science from Bowie State. While I was still working there, I ended up my last position at the NSA. I was their Chief of Operations Data Science. So
Mm,
I ran an organization of data scientists that supported the operations directorate, working some of the most challenging problems across the enterprise, specifically building requirements and working them either embedded within the organization or distributed, deployed across the operations directorate, working in customer spaces. So I did that. Some of the other highlights, I was the lead data scientist for the Edward Snowden leaks.
man.
So yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So I was the data scientist behind the scenes, helping the organization understand what were the equities, in the data.
Mhm.
It was a really cool highlight. One of the awards that I received there that you mentioned was the ODNI Intelligence Community Counter Intel Award, professional award. So great opportunity, kind of working there, understanding the organization, all the way from the worker level to a more senior position, uh, helping shape strategy for data science across NSA. All right, so that's just from a professional standpoint. Uh,
Mhm.
but if we kind of flip the coin and go over to the academic side of the house, so I'm currently a appointed research professor at George Washington University. There, I currently am a PI over two different grants. One grant dealing with, actually, both grants dealing with artificial intelligence. One with artificial intelligence augmentation, and the other, both the National Science Foundation grants, and the other with um, managing the AI security lifecycle for machine learning. So just managing that machine learning process and adding security to it
Mhm.
to make sure that the models are secure, those models are performing with integrity as well as assurance. Um, so I also have appointment at Johns Hopkins University. So I'm senior research faculty there. And part of what I do there is for the past 8 months, I've been helping develop some of the COVID-19 risk models for Johns Hopkins University. And we recently published a paper in Nature Medicine, as well as we developed a application that was a COVID-19 mortality risk calculator, which helps
Mhm.
you understand your mortality risk associated with um, the probability that you have for getting COVID-19 based upon
Yeah.
the location that you're in. So, from the data science, from the academic perspective, all the way through to my career, it's been a whirlwind, but I'm excited to share the story.
Man, you have. I mean, I look back at my career within data science so far, and I'm like, all right, I got a long ways to go, man. Now you've done a tremendous, job, man. Just just contributing to the community in general. And we need that, right? We need people to continue to contribute to the community, continue to do the research, continue to think ahead, the thought leaders, right? We need people that are going to make a difference, right? When growing up, I just said, oh, I just want to make a difference in the world somehow in technology. And data science, I feel like, is probably the best way to do it, because I feel like data science will be the thing that will, solve world hunger, right? That will cure cancer, right? That will, do all these different things, right? Because if you look at historical data, that's how you can make some of the decisions in the future, that will better us. So I really appreciate everything you're doing. And just to start off, I really want to talk about, you've been in the industry for, X amount of years. You've been killing it. You have been, making a strong difference in the industry, as much as you can, and getting into all the research projects. Like, how would you define data science to someone, right? Because I look at it as, I remember doing a post a while ago where it was on Instagram or one of the social media platforms. And the more research I did on what a data science was, I realized that it could be multiple disciplines, right? It seems like I could call, my buddy who's a programmer a data scientist. I could call a mathematician a data scientist, statistician a data scientist. It just seemed like everybody could be a data scientist. You raise your hand. If you're making decisions based off of the data. Sometimes I have clients that I would say, look, I've trained you to become sort of your own mini data scientist, right? To analyze your own data in social media and then make better decisions off of it. So how would you kind of sum it up or define data science?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So one of the things that I think about, and I think this is different from a lot of folks thinking when they approach a definition for data science. But most individuals, when they think about data science, they think about developing capabilities, models, solutions that can be applied to data to help solve some problem, right? But for me, right, I've always, in working in an environment, the solution is just a very small piece of the puzzle, right?
Mhm.
But even bigger and even more important is the aspect of what questions do you actually ask of the data, right? Because the solution with the different sets of capabilities, the models, the frameworks, everything that we have at our capacity to solve problems, it makes that particular step a lot easier. But what is still inherently difficult for many individuals is understanding what questions to ask from a particular
Mhm.
data set, right? So it's really twofold for me. It's um, applying knowledge, kind of experiential knowledge
Mhm.
to the data set to ask the right questions, and then being able to supply leadership with the decisions, right, that will help them achieve the most critical mission outcomes, right? So,
Mhm.
so I kind of flipped the problem on its axis a little. It The most important piece is how do you ask the right questions from the data, and then once you ask the right questions, how do you develop the solutions that can help the decision makers make the correct decisions, and then you align those decisions with the most mission critical or the most operationally critical outcomes.
Right. No, that's a great point, because a lot of times I've gone into, this was before I even started data science. I actually went into sort of a data science initial meetup with a customer, right, in the Intel community. And when I met with them, right, we had a data scientist with us who, initially they were saying, hey, they're trying to come up with the questions, right? What are you trying to ask? I mean, what questions are you trying to bring up, right, for your data, right? What are you trying to solve, right? And a lot of times, they don't even know, right? So they're like, oh, I got all this data, and they don't even know initially what they're like. What do you? That's what we hired you for, to help us out, because we don't know, you know. And so, even if you don't know the customer, you're still going to have to figure out how to figure out those questions, right? The questions are important. So you're right, man. You break up a great point
Yeah.
about that. Have you witnessed that as well, where they don't even know the questions?
Oh, oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. Many. So many organizations that you go into as a data scientist, right? Uh, Most organizations, they're going to ask you to um, approach a specific problem, and that problem usually surrounds a data set, right? So some of the things that I've been asked, and I've seen over and over again in the intelligence community, is they're analysts, right? And these analysts have come across some new data, a data set that is not necessarily new to them, but it's large in velocity, variety, veracity, or volume, right? Like they're trying to figure out how do I bring forth insights, right?
Mhm.
Um, how do I answer the questions that I have from this data set, right? How could you help point me to the most significant insights in this particular data set? And the problem is a lot of analysts, they they know that they want what's important and what's most significant, but when you contextually try to figure out what that is,
Mhm.
these analysts have different stages of their analytic workflows, right?
Ah.
So based upon these different stages, these analysts could need contextually different information, right?
Mhm.
So going in, they're saying, "Hey, I think I need this," but
Mhm.
you dig into it very strategically. You start to understand, okay, if this analyst is um, just in the phase where they want to do reporting, right? They want to report on something, then the actual insight that you would derive would be a lot different from just a exploratory data analysis, right?
Yeah, yeah, initially, yeah.
Exactly. You would be trying to drill down to some level of a prediction, right? A predictive or prescriptive type of analytic that you can point directly to the most significant insight that would help them form a report around that, right? So it really is important to understand contextually where they're at in their workflow
Yeah.
according to the data set, and then try to apply your methodology according to that context.
Yeah, yeah, and that I literally just read something earlier today where it talked about how there is that difference between a data analyst and a data scientist, right? Because sometimes people get those things mixed up and tied up together, right? And one is kind of the data, and the other one is you're trying to figure out, right? You're trying to ask the questions, right? Questions and stuff. And so, people don't think about that, right? There's differences between those different roles and stuff, and the figuring out where you want to go, but yeah, so your journey has been pretty extensive, and it seems like it's been in a short period of time. Like, you've done so many things in a short period of time, right? And made tremendous strides. um People out here in the audience, they really want to know. I have a lot of people that are data scientists, or they're trying to be data scientists, right? And I have young people on that listen to the podcast that say, look, I've gotten some questions where they say, hey, how can I become a data scientist, right? But for me, I do realize that there's a journey that I haven't even finished yet or come close to, and I'm trying to do my doctoral degree in data science, and so I want to know, about your journey a little bit, as far as being a data scientist, um, or getting to that. Was it a long road? And a lot of times you don't even know what you're getting into, right? And I didn't know it. I was like, all right, by the time I got through my second year of my doctoral degree, I said, man, I can't go back. I don't know what. It's a lonely road, and you start having self doubt, right? And they have that thing called the imposter syndrome, right? Where you start thinking, man, am I? am I really, do I know my stuff? Do I know it? I don't know. You know, you might talk to yourself a little bit because nobody else is there to talk to, you know. So,
Yeah,
how was your journey, man?
yeah, that's a great question. So for me, wow, that's a really good question. So for me, it was all about um, accepting the challenge and taking on a new challenge, right? So my background was computer science undergrad. I did my PhD also in computer science, but specifically in my PhD research, I applied large scale processing and machine learning techniques to biological data, right? Genetics and genomics data. Um, so my entire life up to a certain point, I had been understanding principles of programming languages. I have been understanding operating systems, all the way through to data structures, discrete structures, all the way through to just analysis of algorithms, for example, right?
Hmm.
And that was my focus for a long time. So when I got to my dissertation, I drew back on some research that I had done during my time at Harvard and MIT, doing some postgraduate work there. So the challenge was to integrate the analytics and analysis realm into a novel data set, and then try to figure out how could I come up with some innovation around applying machine learning to this very novel, large scale distributed genetics and genomics data set, right? So
Hmm.
it really was a problem that I had where I was faced with how do I analyze this particular data set being as large as it is, and apply some novel analytic methodologies to it so that I can bring some innovation out of this analysis. So the path that I went down was applying data science techniques to a genetics and genomics data set. So that's one. Um, but if you also think about it, right, the challenge wasn't just from my PhD, but the challenge was, you know, at the time when I was at the National Security Agency, you started to see a lot of so NSA is the number one employer for mathematicians, right, in the world.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
So the idea of there's all of these mathematicians, statisticians, applied mathematicians that are now using their skill set and their knowledge and applying it to some of the different data and data repositories across the organization. So you had like this trend of mathematicians starting to apply some of their mathematics backgrounds to analyzing data sets. So there was a pendulum swing from these applied mathematicians to these kind of data scientists, quasi applied mathematicians that are applying their skill sets to analyze these data sets, right? So one of the things that I seen the trend. So I knew in order to kind of stay competitive, I needed to kind of jump into that space, right? I needed to put into that space, and the reason for it is because um, as a computer scientist, you've got a very narrow set of things that you can kind of hang your hat on when it comes to um, full stack development.
Right, right.
Being a software engineer, and then maybe a database administrator. And so the idea is that what was fun to me as well was the analysis and being able to work in more of a research style of environment where I can go back, research a problem, and then apply some novel technique or methodology to a data set, and then be able to crank out some really cool results that you can display and visualize to a customer and kind of tell a story about it as well, right? So, kind of seeing the trend, understanding what I needed to do, I took on some very challenging assignments, right? So,
Hmm.
one of the things that I did was I got a call from George Washington University graduate. And he said, Ben, I know the dean over at George Washington. There's an opportunity to teach a data science course, right?
Mm.
So this was around the time, right before I had completely made the switch to start pursuing data science. And
Oh, so you just started.
right, exactly, right. And this was about I would say this is about 4 years ago though, right? I would say three and some change. Um, and when I signed up for the course, I had about a semester, so I would say about 4 to 5 months to prepare for the course, right? So I took on the course, um, and keep in mind, I had a lot of the analytics and the machine learning background for my dissertation, but
Hmm.
when you think of data science, right? I teach my courses this, right? So it's about the business case evaluation, the data identification, and then acquiring that data, right? Acquiring and kind of filtering that data, right? After you acquire it and filter it, it's about after you acquire it, you filter it, you grab it,
Backing it up, right?
right. You're starting that data munging process, right?
Yeah. Oh
So
man.
you're
Yeah.
starting the evaluation of it. You're starting the validation of it, the aggregation and the representation of it, the cleansing, right? And you're munging away at it, right? And then finally, then you apply your analysis step to it, right? Where you might do some statistical models, machine learning, and then after you do the analysis, it's the validation, and then finally it's the utilization, right? Integration, right, across the organization, right? So I had the analysis piece, right?
Mhm.
When you think about those other components that we
Yeah.
just talked about, right? I didn't have that in my toolkit, right? So I had
Right.
to go. I had to do some major research to be
Mhm.
able to understand that in the end pipeline associated with all of those components in that life cycle, right?
Right.
So I took on the opportunity. I went in and I actually was able to kind of do that research and that necessary research to actually take that knowledge and apply it in that course, and
Mhm.
that kind of set me up because it was do or die at that point, right? I had to
Right.
be ready.
Right. You're already in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that the hours I put in to prepare, the time and the energy and the effort, but
Mhm.
but I had to challenge myself, right? But the time, the energy, the effort that I put in to prepare for that course, it shot me, light years ahead of a lot of people that were just on the precipice of starting to get into the field, trying to figure out what they were doing. But I had to do a deep dive across the entire spectrum so that I could be ready for the course.
Right, right. Now that's a great point. And one of the things that I realize is that throughout the time, like I've talked to a lot of people who are in the data science field, and they always talk about teaching,
Mm,
right?
yes.
Teaching it is probably the best way for you to learn, whatever you're trying to learn. If you can teach it, then you're good to go, right?
That's right.
Because you're going to train your mind to be able to understand all of the stuff that you're trying to teach. And
Right.
so yeah, that's something that definitely came to mind over several interviews and several a lot of times where I've been able to communicate with other people that are in the data science field, right? Like teaching is key, you know.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So have you done a lot of teaching throughout your career so far since that one time, or?
Yeah. So I started at George Washington about 3.5 years ago, I would say. But before that, that was my first class that I
Oh
had
man.
taught.
Wow.
And going in front of a class, a pretty large size class, your first time, you're gonna have some butterflies for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Just like this podcast, right? After you do it over and over and over again, it becomes muscle memory.
Yeah,
It's like a walk in the park to go up and kind of just regurgitate your knowledge of
yeah,
what
yeah.
you have in the subject matter, as well as trying to help the students understand the impact it could have for the areas that they're interested in, but also the value that it can provide for the organizations as well as the community that they're within, right? So, but I started there, and then I'm also, so that's I've taught two courses at George Washington: data science, an intro to data science course, as well as a big data analytics, which is
Mm.
huge. So
Yeah.
it's extremely important. So my big data analytics course is basically a data science course over large scale distributed data in a large scale distributed environment, right? Or
Mhm.
big data in a large scale distributed environment. So that's extremely important. So it kind of comes hand in hand. The data science, which is more applying the methodologies and cleaning the data all the way to the visualization, and then really from a big data perspective, right? As data continues to grow in size, right? You
Mhm.
have to have that skill set of if you were to get a large data set, how would you ingest that into some platform? What frameworks would you use? And then how would you adjust statistically according to the size of the data so that your results can still be statistically relevant? But George Washington, and then I'm currently crafting up a course to teach at Johns Hopkins right now, which would be dealing specifically with genetics and genomics, creating large
Right.
scale distributed genetics and genomics pipelines and applying machine learning algorithms to that data as well. And that'll be in the biostatistics department. So um, I trust me on this as you kind of go towards furthering your career as a data scientist. Think about teaching some course because it helps you, it forces you to develop a curriculum. It forces you to go out and expand your knowledge in different areas that you might be questioned on when you're standing in front of a class of 40 students and you have to know an answer, right?
Right, right. Because they will question you, right?
They will question you,
They
right?
got some
They
people in
will.
that's probably smarter
That's
than
right.
us.
That's right. So that really helped me, and it would I tell anybody that has those aspirations, once you get to a level that you feel that you would have the ability to get the opportunity, wholeheartedly take it and don't look back. Use it as a stepping stone to and a forcing mechanism to put you where you need to be at.
Great, great, great. Yeah, it's all about kind of taking ownership, taking those challenges, right? Where you think that you're more than likely you're probably nervous, about teaching right in front of a large crowd, but that's getting out of your comfort level. Big part of a data scientist to be able to take it to the next level. So one question I do have: so what fascinated you the most that made you say, all right, I want to be a data scientist. Well, I want to get into that.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, for me, so data science is very interdisciplinary, right? In a
Hmm.
sense, right? Because you're bringing in, like, you have to have an area of subject matter expertise.
Right.
You have to understand uh, uh, elementary, intermediate statistics, as well as advanced analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all of that for your analysis piece, right? But then you also have to be a storyteller, right?
Hmm.
You are able to take the data, represent it, create visualizations of it, and then tell the story that's associated with your data. So for me, um, it was more about for a guy like myself, right? Um, I did not want to be a full stack developer where I was hit head down, heads down within the project, and all I did was code for
Hmm.
8 hours, and sign out my timesheet, and then go back the next day and do eight
Right.
more hours of code, right? So interpersonal skills are very important as a data scientist because no matter, and what I've seen is no matter how good your analysis is, if you can't tell the story behind the why as to why you selected these methodologies, the
Mm.
why behind why you selected these validation measures and the validation criteria, and the why as to when you did the business case evaluation, why did you even take this approach for analysis, right? So it's very important. So looking at the qualities that I had, looking at, you know, the aspirations that I had, and kind of putting all that together, data science was the kind of the medium in between many areas that I either had aspirations for or I had the qualities of, and that was a formula for success. So I kind of did a self assessment, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
where do I want to be at in the future, right?
Yeah.
Where do I want to be spending my time? Do I want to be working on technology products, or do I want to be supporting customers on a day-to-day basis, helping applying different research techniques and methodologies, and helping the customer solve problems? And that's where I felt that I would have the most impact, as well as my skill set aligned the best with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a great point. You bring in character into play. And thinking about, where do we want to be, 10 years from now, right? And you take that route. A lot of people don't think that far in the future, but that's, as a data scientist, I think if you do want to take that route, you want to think that far in the future. Is
Yeah,
that someone that you want to be in front of the customer, helping them think about the future, thought leadership, figuring out, how, what's the best strategy and plan for the future with their data that they have, right? Then that's really, what a data science is all about. I'm all about forward thinking, and not really being in the weeds. You have to know that stuff, right? Of course, but being in front of the customer was always something that was exciting to me because they have all these different challenges, and it's about how do you solve that.